Hey, everybody, you're in the green room for DisrupTV. We're talking about Twitter and Elon Musk. Just kidding. We're going to do some quick introductions like we always do with our guests, and we're going in reverse order. So Susan, where are you calling in from? What are we talking about today?
Hey, Ray. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me, too. Susan Brady. I'm calling in from Needham, Massachusetts. We're going to talk about a book I just wrote with Janet Foudy of Deloitte and Lynn Perry-Wooten of Simmons University called Arrive and Thrive, 7 Impactful Practices for Women Navigating Leadership.
Woohoo. All right. Thank you very much. So, Dustin, where are we calling in from? What are we talking about today?
Calling in from Austin, Texas. We're going to be talking about government technology or GovTech plus smart cities. So thanks for having me. Longtime watcher, first time on the show.
I can't believe it's the first time. I swear to God we had you on the show, but apparently not. So we're like, what? Shrijeet, where are you calling in from? What's going on?
Well, Mumbai. I'm here to learn from all my colleagues and yourself, and more importantly, talking about a lot has changed in the last 2-3 years since the pandemic has hit us. How do you stay relevant in the new world?
Really, really good topics. And with that, we're going to kick off. I'll hand it over back to you, Elle. We'll do the countdown, and then we will start the show. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you live.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests, your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them in the next hour. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Surviving and Thriving in a World of Digital Giants. Ray's a regular television business and technology news contributor on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Wall Street Journal. Just about every week, turn on the TV and you'll see my good friend and co-host, Ray. He's also a global sought-after keynote speaker, and in my humble opinion, one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter, yes, Twitter, at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. Executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, I also see him on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet. But it's not about us. It's about our amazing guests. And of course, who do we have to kick it off today, Vala?
We also have a long distance award winner as our first guest, dialing in from Mumbai, Shrijeet Mishra, Chief Information Officer and Head of Group Services at Aditya Birla Management Corp. Shrijeet joined Aditya Birla Group, a Fortune 500, the 46 billion plus conglomerate in May of 2018, and oversees multiple innovation areas of data and analytics, consumer-centric innovation, innovation fund ecosystems, brand development, sustainability, and IT for the group. During his 34 years global career spanning more than 3 decades across businesses and functions, P&L, marketing, supply chain ventures, and across geographies, Asia Pacific, Africa, Middle East, Shrijeet has helped transform many brands and businesses. Shrijeet works with leading global universities such as MIT, Wharton, TIE, and advises many state and national governments on creating sustainable innovation ecosystems. Welcome, Shrijeet, to DisrupTV.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry for cutting your bio short. You've done a lot, but we only have 20 minutes.
We're so excited to have you. And I think, let's think about it. We talk about the 5 I's, like invasion, inventory, infection, interest rates, right? I mean, it's just incredible, like what's going on across the board, right? And I mean, and we've faced almost every single thing that's possibly happened to us. What's changed? What's going on here? Why are we, where are we seeing major shifts across the business environment? And what are you seeing? What are some of those big things where we have to reevaluate theories and existing assumptions, right? Because something has changed. Like we call this the great refactoring, but what do you see? Oh, I think we may have a connection issue.
Many of our, can you hear me?
We can hear you again. Yeah, please continue. So, and if you have trouble, just refresh, come back in, and we'll carry the conversation. So
yeah. So I think that in the pandemic context has really shifted the business environment dramatically, and it has forced us to reevaluate old theories and assumptions. There are 5 major trends that have transformed, and in the way you look at it, this impacts all dimensions of innovations, talent, and the future of work. The first trend is reassessing through purpose. Purpose is going to be the core to any organization's success. Employees are going through a process of deep soul searching and questioning in what they do. Success stories, humanized leadership, and sharing them over the team is going to be a big area of future need. Flexibility to remain agile is my second trend. You need an agile mindset. And the shift is not restricted only to digital arena. We know what digital has done to this world. It needs policies and processes to support it. That's something that I'm seeing across the board impacting not just our businesses, but lives. The third is, of course, everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it, the digital first mindset. The need for digital talent to create these digital transformations.
Yeah, I mean, the talent aspect of digital transformation is very, very important. And I think we're seeing that.
It's a huge issue. Yeah. We are not, the other thing that it has forced us to do is to reimagine growth exponentially and not incrementally, because the change around with the consumers is way faster than the change in the businesses. The fourth trend is 1 + 1 + 1 is not 3. It's 11. I believe that organizations in the future will have to bring 50% of their revenues through partnerships and ecosystems beyond their businesses in the future. And last and not the least, the fifth trend is creating value from ESG, not looking at ESG as something that you have to, it's not a law that you have to adhere to. The new lens that you have to take on is to look at how do you create a competitive advantage through ESG. Whether it's circularity, energy, there are lots of opportunities in that area, but there's a need for us to look at ESG not as something that you have to be forced to do, but something that will create a competitive edge. Those are some of the changes or the trends that I'm seeing that has got accelerated in the last 2 years.
Shrijeet, that's a very robust, complete set of impacts: purpose-led innovation, flexibility to remain agile, digital-first mindset, reimagining growth exponentially, partnerships and ecosystems, and creating value from ESGs. I think those are wonderful and significant drivers in terms of how you succeed in this decentralized, hyper-connected, digital-first economy. Which one of these impacts do you think is the most struggle for, let's say, the enterprise, not the small or medium, but where is the large enterprise, medium to large enterprise struggling the most? Is it purpose-led? Is it value creation from ESGs? Where do you see the highest level of friction in terms of companies adapting to this new normal?
A lot of things happening with the companies, but partnership is not something that comes naturally to large corporations with young startups. It doesn't come naturally at all. And I always keep telling people, startups are not employees. You have to work with them differently. It's not partnerships only with startups. It's partnership with academia. It's partnership with governments. It's partnership with large organizations to co-create value for the future. And I think this partnership role, the fact that you have to create ecosystem through partnerships, you cannot do it alone. The world has changed. You should not try to do things alone. It's going to be partnerships that are going to create the biggest difference in the future. Perhaps that's one area where I think a lot needs to be moved in the needle. The second, I think, is sustainability. I think people look at sustainability, as I said, through a lens of an adherence that we have to do. Yes, that's true. But if you have to really create the advantage for the future, and I think we better move quickly on this, it's about creating competitive advantage. It is possible to make that happen, provided everybody comes together. Otherwise, I think, yeah, go ahead. Otherwise, I think it's
I'm just going to follow up. Where is the role of government in terms of getting the private and public sector, like education, together and foster and cultivate a healthy ecosystem?
So I think lots of governments are beginning to realize this. I can take examples from my own experience of Israel. I can take an example of some of the Central Eastern Europe countries, and of course Singapore. They cannot just connect with government. They have to connect government to corporate to their innovation ecosystems. People thus far were thinking one government alone can do it. There are a combination of ideas that a government A and a government B with a corporate C can actually come together across the world and create an advantage which will be useful for the entire world. I think that shift has begun. Has it moved at the pace that it should? No. Secondly, governments are also willing to invest in areas, particularly for their academia or the startups that have come from their country, to find consumption centers in across the world, particularly in the area of, again, sustainability, because sustainability and innovation are expensive opportunities that the governments are willing to invest for the first bit as we go ahead. I think there are changes clearly happening between governments. It's a matter of time, because the world has to realize the only way to go forward is to partner.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? And we see new business models as we are going forward in terms of those partnerships. We think these business models, some of them are built on data, some of them are built on new types of ecosystem models, some are built on in the Web 3.0, decentralized models that are actually popping up. Some are even built as, partnerships with your customers, right? So we're seeing new types of business models emerge. When you're talking to clients, what do you see as some of those top areas that are emerging? Like, what are you advising and guiding clients on?
I think in the area of B2C, that bit of working with ecosystems and creating value from ecosystems is beginning to happen. In the B2B space, that's also catching up slowly, and we are seeing a lot of work coming up across procurement, project management, demand supply matching, etc. Of course, service as an opportunity is another thing that seems to be coming up quite well. It's not just about products. It's about products, services through experiences that companies are looking at. And I think John Deere is a great example, which I'm sure you guys are all aware of. If you look at how the company has moved from being just not an agricultural, a company that sells tractors, to being a company that actually advises farmers through digital solutions. One I think area where there's a lot that's beginning to come together in the world, academia world, like I said again, and the government world, is sustainability and innovation. That's the other big piece that seems to be coming together.
But just to put the context, right? I mean, Aditya Birla is a $46 billion, almost $50 billion USD company. I mean, these are some large things and shifts. The area that you work in is really helping customers with that strategy, that advice, and that innovation. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I have, my oldest is attending university, and I'm not sure if I'm convinced higher education is a good product. It's expensive, so it's not accessible to most. Students don't finish in time. And I would argue in many instances, what they're learning is not quite applicable when they find their first job. So, and again, I'm a undergraduate, graduate product. It helped shape my career. But I do think it's an area that's ripe for disruption, for business model innovation, better product, more affordable, more accessible, and more relevant. Can you talk about business model innovation? And it doesn't have to be higher education, but which sectors, which industries are serious about finding new sources of revenue by reinventing their products and services in order to compete in this new digital first economy?
So let me try and talk about education. I completely agree with you. By the way, I have both my daughters who have come from University of Chicago.
Great
I think
school.
Cool. Yeah.
What about 80,000 a year tuition?
Well, 85.
Oh my God. 85.
He got the bill, apparently.
It is expensive. It is expensive, no question. But I honestly believe education is not a waste at all. Okay, that's my fundamental belief.
I agree.
Having said that, how do you make it more relevant? I really believe that corporates must come together with the educational institutions, and there must be a 6-month project that should be given to every kid in a cross-functional manner. Get cross-functional kids, work with the real project, and if it goes through, maybe that's where they get employed. And I think some of the universities are beginning to think about it. By the way, I also advise educational institutions to relook at their curriculum for the future. Coming to your next question on where do I see business models emerging, I think clearly in the B2C retail area, there is a lot that's happening which is very, very successful. There is a lot that's also happening in the space of the value chain, which is quietly happening, which is not seen so much in the consumer space, but there's a lot happening in the value chain space as well. There is through the digital route, there is, of course, how do you improve operational efficiency? But there's a lot happening in the area of what I believe is transformation for the future. And those are all happening through models. Let me take one example to make a point. Sure. As of today, Aditya Birla Group works with around about 100 number of startups across the world. 50% of them are digital. We give our startups scale that no other company can give across the world. 2, we work with the startups as they are startups, they're not our employees. Size does not matter. We fast track our learning. Sometimes we co-create with them and create a better product for the future. We make sure we operate with minority shares so that we let startups be startups. If you asked me 5 years back, would you have thought of this? The answer is no. I think there are new business models emerging in this partnership area with startups, academia, and governments. There are lots that I cannot talk about given the that's going on at the moment. But I can tell you there's a lot happening with partnerships in this space to create new business models.
That's great.
We are real excited, right? And it's those business models. Some of the things that I've been talking about are on data-driven digital networks, right? We have creator economies hitting data-driven digital networks in terms of the market size. And of course, what's happening in the middle between that connection, not just of information and insights, but also the brokering of decisions that's going to happen in the future. That part is one part of the economy. But if I just want to get started, what do I need to do? What's important, as a first step that you would suggest?
And there are lots of things that are impacting work per se, whether it is, who's going to do the work or what work can be automated, which is the work itself, the workforce, who are the people, what is the new talent? Is the definition of employee need not be a permanent employee. It could be gig workers. It could be part-time work. How do you integrate those people? And third is what we have seen in the last 2 years, the workplace itself. Where do you work from? Yeah. Actually, you could work from anywhere. Fundamentally, many things have changed. The forces impacting work have changed dramatically. But some things have not changed. And we believe that the future of creating a competitive advantage remains on the 2 big pillars. If you look at an A symbol and you look at consumer customer centricity as one big pillar, And the second big pillar of the A is driving business sustainability. I'm choosing the word carefully, not sustainability, but driving businesses sustainably. If you look at these two as the two pillars, everything else, digital, innovation, both inside out and outside in, partnerships, whether it's startups, value chain, government organizations, large corporates, or academia, these are all enablers. Fundamentally, what has not changed is that you have to think there is nothing called a B2B. There is a C at the end of every B2B, for God's sake. Think like a consumer company and operate like a responsible technology and manufacturing company. So thinking like a consumer company and operating like a responsible technology manufacturing company is going to be the future of success.
I love that. Yeah.
We are here with Shrijeet Mishra, Chief Innovation Officer and Head Group Services of Aditya Birla Management Corporation Private Limited. And of course, we are thankful for you for staying up so late to be with us today on the show. So thank you.
Absolute
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Have a good night. See you in Mumbai, maybe.
I love that. Behind every B2B is a C. He's right. I mean, people do business with people at the end of the day, and you build relationships with people, not products or services. Okay. We have an award-winning second guest, Ray. Dustin Haisler is the Chief Innovation Officer for e.Republic. e.Republic is the nation's only media and research company focused exclusively on state and local government. Dustin is also an Eisenhower Fellow and program faculty for the Certified Public Management Program at Texas State University. As a former Chief Innovation Officer and Assistant City Manager for the city of Manor, Texas, a city outside of Austin, Dustin quickly built a track record and a reputation as early innovator in civic tech. Dustin pioneered government use of commercial technologies not before used in public sector, including quick response, barcodes, crowdsourcing, and gamification. Dustin was named as one of the nation's top 25 doer, dreamer, and driver of government technologies. I haven't made a list of top 2,500, and he's top 25, and was recently recognized as a 2021 Business Transformation 150 leader by this company I know, Constellation Research. You can follow Dustin on Twitter. He must be an early adopter because he was able to get his first and last name, Dustin Haisler, DustinHaisler. Welcome, Dustin, to DisrupTV.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Love having a top 25 award winner on our show. So thank you.
Well, you know what? This BT 150 alumni network is pretty amazing, and congrats on so many things that you've been doing. When you think about GovTech and where we are, that's an area where we could all benefit, right? It's a public good and the ability to help state and local governments use more technology. How did you get started, right? I mean, you've got an amazing career. Let's start and say, hey, when did you kick this part off? So
and do us a favor, when Ray just casually throws GovTech in there, can you just kind of tell us the history of what that means, GovTech?
Exactly.
Yeah. So GovTech is government technology. So it's basically the market that all the investors told you to avoid when you raised capital, right? Government and education. So, but it's actually a market that is really, it's not a new market. I mean, we've had GovTech forever, but you had a lot of older kind of incumbents that had locked up those contracts. Fast forward to today, GovTech is a $130.5 billion industry. Spread out across state and local government agencies across the country, and technology is central to all of that. And it's incredible to see kind of everything that's happening there. As far as my story, kind of back to Ray's question, I was an accidental public servant. I had a career in banking, stumbled into our bank president, retired, and hired me to be a city CFO. Twisted my arm. I ended up there. And as a tightwad finance guy, I knew enough about technology to know that I wanted to do it myself. And we partnered with the Obama administration, partnered with the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford under BJ Fogg, and really did some crazy things with collective intelligence and finding ways to extend, the value of technology all the way down to kind of the constituent level. And then, from there, I just became addicted at, being able to work in the market and see the changes that we were doing impact people's lives day in and day out. And, government's a great industry because everything that exists in the enterprise, every vertical that exists in the enterprise also exists inside of City Hall. So you have a great kind of petri dish of potential and opportunity and so much need that's there. So it's an incredible time to be a public servant in the market today, or to be an entrepreneur or an existing company that is serving that market.
I love that. Listen, anyone who color codes his books in the bookshelf is someone who has creativity, precision, and understands the power of art and beauty. So you work in the market. That's an intersection of technology and government, GovTech. And you've said GovTech is going through an app store moment of sorts. Let's talk about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to when the iPhone was first released, it was a
2007.
Yeah, 2007, exactly right. It was a closed ecosystem. You got what you got, and if you wanted to add additional capabilities, you had to jailbreak your phone and risk, potentially getting bricked in an update. But fast forward, to 2008, Apple released the App Store, and basically it democratized access to that platform and gave you the ability to add capabilities to that existing platform. So you could get a flashlight app before they standardized it in the UI. You could get all of this other stuff that increased the value of the phone in that ecosystem. And so government is very similar from an analogy standpoint to that, moment. For the longest time, it was a locked up ecosystem of, large contracts, lots of relationship driven buys, and, a lot of monolithic multi-year deals. But now cloud has kind of democratized access to government, and you've got a variety of kind of disparate forces that have created this perfect storm of this app store moment. I mean, you got changing expectations both inside and outside of government. When the pandemic happened, people were like, no, government needs to move quicker. I need to call unemployment insurance. I need to, get some of these things handled. And so their expectations increased. You got a new wave of government leaders that are coming in, many from the private sector that are, looking at these green screens saying, no, we're not going to do it that way. And you've got existing people that have kind of risen through the ranks that are also challenging those norms. You've got cloud that's unlocked, the infrastructure side. You don't have to build $100 million data center in order to build state-of-the-art infrastructure. Now you can go partner with someone to do it. You've got a lot of increased funding that's available for tech too. I mean, you look at all of the federal stimulus, from IIJA to ARPA to CARES, that's created once in a generational funding for state and local agencies to reimagine the way they deliver services. The pandemic loosened a lot of procurement rules and regulations. The notion of doing a Zoom court hearing, prior to the pandemic was crazy. Then you fast forward and now you got Lawyer Cat and all these other things that have kind of emerged from there, right? So, and then, the incumbents in the market had to innovate. And so the market started to really accelerate. Incumbents found new ways to kind of, latch onto this platform mentality. But you have a new class of entrepreneurs that are coming in that are looking at tackling complex government challenges and doing some amazing things. And they're raising funding. And I think that's probably been the biggest shift. I mean, last year alone, in 2021, GovTech companies only focused on state and local government as a primary customer, raised over $1 billion in venture capital, which is crazy to think about. Government as an industry, now there's so many investors at all stages, from seed all the way through, that are looking at helping fund and scale companies in this space because they saw it was recession proof, and that spending increased during the pandemic because the need rose. And so it's such an exciting time to see all of those forces collide. And now government agencies have best of breed capabilities that they can leverage to, tackle whatever challenges that they have to tackle. So it's an exciting time.
That's amazing. That's a huge number, Ray. $1 billion in venture capital in 1 year.
For GovTech, this is a huge number. I mean, it's never been like that. Maybe a couple $100 million, like $1 billion is at a scale we haven't seen before. And, it's just amazing. Now, you're probably seeing a bunch of these hot tech opportunities that are popping in. It's a bunch of unmet needs. Definitely, Zoomcat isn't one of them. But, if you're sitting on the 394th Judicial Court somewhere in Texas. But anyways, the point being is that's not one of them. But here's, you're sitting on this, right? You guys are covering it. You're seeing it. You're in the middle of the action. Tell us what's hot, right? What are people looking at? What are some of these unmet needs? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting to see how the market has evolved because for the longest time, we saw a lot of the shiny object innovation where someone would deploy some SaaS app that was great, but it was kind of a nice to have. It wasn't mission critical. Then you started to see technology work its way towards the back end. So some of the hottest areas today are actually, some of the unsexy problems in government that have to be tackled, like system modernization, looking at the system of record. Many agencies don't have a CRM and they have, kind of older school ERPs, and they have to look at how do we modernize some of these core systems in the way that we do business. Yeah, Vala's, right there. There's your guy right there. So, how do we modernize those systems? How do we connect all these disparate data sets? One interesting trend that happened with the pandemic, we talk about shadow IT, where you have departments that have kind of their own IT that they run. We saw shadow apps emerge, where you had departments that had to move quicker than the CIO, and they deployed applications at the edge. And so now the CIOs are trying to reconcile all of this, bring it back into the enterprise stack and wrap it up and secure it. And so there's a lot of need when it comes to these enterprise kind of wrappers, thinking about the data layer. You've also got a lot of technology needs around augmenting employees, not replacing employees, but augmenting them. So finding ways to use RPA, AI, ML, low code, no code, to enhance the ability for employees to serve more people, to more effectively do their job. So a lot of innovation kind of happening at that people level. And then lastly, kind of the data side of things. Agencies were glued, we were all glued to the Johns Hopkins dashboards during the pandemic, and we used that to make policy.
Go Hopkins.
Yeah. So now we are conditioned to say, okay, if we could use that to make policy decisions, what else can we do with data for real, right? We've had dashboards forever, but how do we actually use dashboards for real to make decisions that have an inherent impact on operations that we can prove? And so there's a big emphasis on operationalizing data today as well.
Our last guest, Dustin, kind of alluded to the importance of ecosystem building and being inclusive of startups, and from seed investing to Series A, B, C, D, and my company has been consistently one of the most active corporate venture capital entities in the U.S. I think between Google Ventures and Salesforce Ventures, and then Coinbase recently, believe it or not, has been super active. So we believe in the startup ecosystem to a tune of investing in a new startup on almost a weekly cadence, so north of 52 some odd startup investments per year. What's the government appetite and ability to include young private companies in terms of building their technology stack and their ability to create value?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And for the longest time, it was difficult for startups to interface with government, especially larger government agencies, because, you had requirements for infrastructure that you just couldn't afford to meet. You didn't have enough runway or capital to get to that point. That's where Cloud kind of democratized access to that, because you didn't have to worry about meeting all of those infrastructure check boxes. You could just partner with a company that did it for you and build capabilities on top of that stack. And so I think that's kind of where we're at today. Right now, you can have best of breed application capabilities that are delivered on a secure stack that can come from a company of 3 people that are solving real tangible problems. So it's so exciting. I mean, in fact, 5 years ago, we started something called the GovTech 100, just to try to find who are companies, both startups and, existing incumbents that are solely focused on state and local government as a market. And we started recognizing 100 companies each year doing that. And it's been interesting. I mean, now there's hundreds and hundreds of companies that are emerging that are targeting this market. And they're building on that platform. They're building on that stack. And so it's accelerated the amount of innovation and the amount of new capabilities that government agencies can kind of tap into. So, cloud, it's important to remember, a decade ago was illegal in government. You couldn't on-premise data requirements. So, even if agencies found a nice, company that they wanted to work with, they couldn't put things in a cloud environment because the procurement rules and the regulations on data storage didn't keep up with that. Now we've seen that loosen. Now agencies are working with startups, all kinds of interesting experiments and finding new ways to push the envelope. So I think it's definitely an important part of kind of the innovation stack of state and local government agencies.
Do you know what portion of that $1 billion VC money that went to GovTech last year, what technology category was the dominant piece of that pie? Was it cybersecurity, change management? What was the?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when we do our benchmark surveys and ask state and local IT leaders, what's your top priority? Number one priority always is cybersecurity. Yeah. What is the least funded thing in a state and local government IT budget? Cybersecurity. So less than 2% of an overall for IT in state and local government is expended towards cyber. And of course, it's reactionary, like you see, right? So that is a challenge. I think that when you look at the breakdown, historically, it has been things that are physical, hardware, network infrastructure,
data center. Wi-Fi infrastructure. Yeah.
Right. But over the last 3 years, that's changed. And now we're seeing services, software as a service, managed services, the things that are virtual, to Mark Andreessen's point, software eating the world, it's eating the government IT budget too. And so that has really become a large center of where that budgetary funding is being expended, is in that category of software services and kind of managed services on top of it. So we hope to see more cyber spending, but we still have this CapEx, OpEx debate that takes place in our market at times, because it's not the CIOs, it's actually the governing bodies and the governance structure of state and local agencies that are used to the model of going to Best Buy, buying Microsoft Word, owning it, right? Those days are over. Now you have to think about an operational model where you're expending it on a regular basis and continuing to invest in it. And ownership is kind of one thing that gets passed down the road. So it's an interesting time.
That's amazing.
You know, it's a great point. And hey, taking that to the next level, right? You know, where these organizations are happening. Like, we have the now and then, but now we've got this future of smart cities, right? And smart cities are taking it to the next level. I was hanging out with my buddy, Miguel Gamino. As you know, he's in charge of cities for MasterCard. He's also in Austin, one of the BT 150 alumni. We should all get together down.
Yeah, we should. Miguel's a great guy.
and as you know,
he's
right?
got the best shoe game, by the way, just if you know Miguel.
That he does. That he does.
No, he does. And the question is, like, how do we, what is next for smart cities, right? There's a lot of infrastructure that's required to make that happen, but we're seeing a lot of investment coming back into cities, but we're just at the point where density as a business model no longer exists, right? People are moving further out to exurbs. People are trying to get bigger spaces for themselves. People are looking at, getting out of cities for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Where does it go?
That's a great question. So, I think from a smart city standpoint, there's, some things that are holding back the full realization of what a smart city can be. I think number one, we're very quick to latch onto the tech, right? The shiny objects, IoT. Let's make every trash can in our community connected to the internet, every streetlight connected to the internet, right? So the challenge is that's a lot of capital that you have to expend for a use case that may not justify that expense, right? And so I think we have to take a step back and look at what is the problem we're trying to solve. And that's where I say it starts with people, right? So one of my close collaborators, Chelsea Collier, and I wrote kind of a smart cities playbook where we realized, part of the problem with sustainable smart cities is that we're not starting with people. We're starting with perceived solutions that can solve perceived problems at a top level. But if we really look at our population, kind of like the business model canvas, right? If we look at our audience that we're trying to serve and understand what their unique needs are, does it really make sense to have a chatbot or a voice assistant for a service that costs, X amount of dollars if only 0.1% of the population is going to use it? So how do we understand our people to have the highest degree of impact with the technology that's there? And we also have to recognize that smart cities aren't all about tech. So sometimes it's just a process hack that you have to do to get through it. I think the biggest challenge is we also have to look at the built environment of existing cities. So where I've seen failures is when we go out and try to build, these shiny object cities that test, the potential of technology, although it's great MVPs for that. At the end of the day, it's only going to be sustainable if you can retrofit it to what already exists in the built environment. So I think we have to start to think about the ecosystem of these existing cities to understand how do we leverage what we already have to make more out of that, to get smarter at what we're doing. And, what IoT sensors do we already have that we can maybe flip around into other use cases that can solve some of these other problems. So I think we have to look at that. And then, of course, we have to do it together, right? Right now, unfortunately, when it comes to smart cities, the international community is really leading the charge here when it comes to the standardization of this technology. And I think we have to start to look at how do we take a people-centric approach that focuses on retrofitting the existing environment that's standardized in an applicable way across big and small communities across the country. And I think that's where we'll start to see some magic.
That's awesome. Was that a reference to Alex Osterwalder's book?
That's right. That's right.
Oh wow! Dustin is a deep thinker. He snuck that. That was awesome.
That's actually a great book and a great reference that I use for government agencies, especially when they have governing members that go to conferences and they come back with shiny object syndrome, and they're like, "Yeah, we need to come back and implement AI at the edge." And I'm like, "Pull out a business model canvas on that idea and show me the value and also the long-term cost associated with that." So there you go.
Yeah, the 9 building blocks makes you think logically, brings clarity of thought. And his latest book, Invincible Company, is really another great read.
It's one of my white books over here. So.
Oh, okay. I should have looked. You made it easy. You made it easy for any of us to find it. My question to you is, we just found out before the show you live 10 minutes from the Gigafactory, and it makes me think. What's the role of private sector to help develop the smart city blueprint, but also help it scale by having a company that has audacious goals, but also invest enough R&D to really address the elasticity or the mobility of what you said. Can you come to an existing city and retrofit it to be smart? And there's only a few companies I can probably count on one hand that have demonstrated to me that they have the ability to do that. So private company working with government to really make this come to life.
Yeah, I think private sector plays a critical role in it, right? Agencies can't do it by themselves. Private sectors can't do it by themselves, as we've seen. Yeah. But it's that collaborative kind of connectivity between them that I think is going to be so critical. I mean, you think about public-private partnerships, right? And the previous kind of model of how we finance, infrastructure deployments. I think we kind of have to look at a new model there, kind of what we're calling P4s, public-private partnerships, where it's taking that private sector involvement, but also working with not just one agency, but other agencies, right? To kind of look at the demonstration of scalability from one environment to another, thinking broader about the potential impact. So if I were a private sector company, probably one of the ones, that you're thinking of, I would focus on broader impact. Don't just pick one regional area. Pick multiple cities to test things in simultaneously. Look at developing standards for data, standards for technology, standards for interoperability across the core systems in government, and open source the heck out of it and make it shareable. Make it something easy to use. I mean, I think that's kind of what's missing right now. Is everything right now from a standards standpoint is proprietary, and so there's a reason why you can't compare your data to another city's data, in a way that's helpful or useful for you, because it's all stored differently and vendors have locked it up. So I think we have to start to get a little bit better about how we broaden that. But the private sector plays such a critical role in that ecosystem of how they do it.
Sage advice.
It's great advice. We are here with one of the top thinkers in GovTech. And of course, Dustin, Chief Innovation Officer at e.Republic. You can follow him at Dustin Haisler, DustinHaisler on Twitter. Thank you for being on the show. And of course, we'll see you at CCE. So take care.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dustin. Big thinker in a very important space. Okay, speaking of big thinkers, this is where we bring up the cleanup hitter to hit a grand slam. So I should have used a different terminology or different sport, given our next guest last name is Brady. Susan Brady is CEO of Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership and author of Arrive and Thrive. Susan is a Deloitte Ellen Gabriel Chair for Women and Leadership at Simmons University, and the first Chief Executive Officer of the Simmons University Institute of Inclusive Leadership. The Institute develops the mindset and skills of leaders and at all stages of life so they can foster gender parity and culture of inclusion. As a relationship expert, leadership well-being coach, author, and speaker, Susan educates leaders and executives globally on fostering self-awareness and optimal leadership. Susan advises executive teams on how to work together effectively and create inclusion and gender parity in organization. Susan is passionate about work with women at all levels of their organization leadership to fully realize and manifest their leadership potential. Susan is author of Arrive and Thrive, 7 impactful practices for women navigating leadership. You can follow Susan on Twitter as Susan M. Brady 1, the number 1. Welcome, Susan, to DisrupTV.
I have 2 Twitter handles, and Susan and Brady 1 was like so 2018. This S McEntee Brady is.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry about that.
It's like, do you know how hard it is to cancel a Twitter account?
I do.
Oh, good. Yes. And you kind of owe me one because you did introduce me with a sports metaphor, but I won't make fun of you for that. It is the play.
He's my favorite player. He's my favorite player of all sports.
No. Let's be clear. It's been a really good run living in Boston with the last name Brady. Like I'm down with that. Now he's in Tampa. Got some friends down in Tampa. Kind of cool.
No, that's awesome.
We've got all of East Coast as fans.
So, from sports to executive coaching. I mean, this is kind of where we're headed. Like, you're coaching business stars. You're supposed to, female leaders, the future of what's happening in terms of, where we're going in DEI. What led you to write this book, right? I mean, you're sitting in the middle of the action. You see what's going on and you're like, I've got an idea. What drove you to write the book?
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, if you haven't noticed, we're not doing a very good job creating gender equity in leadership. Okay, there's very few of us in C-level positions, and too often, when when women are encouraged to get their foot in the door, we're sort of leaving our women out there to sort of figure it out on their own. And in any context where you are the underrepresented population, it's just harder to get stuff done and to know how to operate. And so, the book is our attempt to start honest conversations and help women with the resources and advice and support they need to thrive. I don't know. I don't really want to just survive anymore in leadership. I want to thrive, and I want to see more women too thriving among the men. That's why we wrote.
When I look at the 7 principles, investing in your best self, embracing authenticity, cultivating courage, fostering resilience, inspiring a bold vision, creating a healthy team environment, and committing to the work of an inclusive leader, I can benefit from this incredible wisdom. So I was going to ask you, who should read this? But I think I know the answer. Anybody who wants to be a good leader and build a great team.
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
Totally. Look, the 7 practices I think are really, really helpful leadership practices, however you identify. The wrapper of this book, and frankly, the context for some of the practices is, geared towards what it means to be a woman navigating, if you wake up woman, the world's a different place, and you actually do need to foster more resilience and think about your authenticity. By the way, side note, Amy Weaver is featured from Salesforce, president of Salesforce, is featured in our book. We interviewed Amy, and she was really helpful in bringing authenticity to life for us in our second practice. Yeah.
She's not only authentic, but super likable. She's so accessible. I mean, we'll go to events, and she's one of maybe second, third highest ranking executive at Salesforce, president. She's accessible to anyone. There isn't an entourage protecting her as a president of a giant company. She's terrific. So,
I love that about her because, she defies the likability bias. You guys know what the likability bias is. It's one of the most common biases women face at work. And that is, if you approach someone with a hand of likability, those of all genders will want to trade off your likability. Well, you must not be as smart. Whereas if you're not as likable, you're more believably intelligent and credible. And so I would do a lot of work with men, and I make sure to point out women like Amy, but also, I consider myself actually pretty intelligent and pretty likable. This is what this looks like. It's okay. We can have fun. We can get along, and we can have really smart conversations all at the same time. So it's important to just notice when we do that trade-off.
That's awesome. Well, Ray is very likable and super smart as well. So go ahead, Ray.
I don't know. There's a trade-off. There's a trade-off. I think you have to be less likable. I think I'd rather be less likable.
I don't think you can do that, Ray. I don't think it's in your DNA. Go ahead.
But hey, let's go back to a little bit of things that you've encountered, things that are important to you. What are 1 or 2 of your greatest skill sets that have helped you survive, thrive, and been successful? So.
Well, I'd say I was raised by wolves. I was raised by a single father. I had men who are, my minister as a kid, and my mentors and coaches. And I think I really believed in meritocracy. I really did not think the world was going to be any different for me. I was just going to go for it. So I do have a sense of self-confidence, and I think a little bit of blindness when it comes to, I'm a woman and I look different and I act different. So I think my ability to persevere and lead with some level of confidence and be bold has helped me. And also to just be genuine, I guess that's part of it. But I've had to wake up to my own impact, you guys. And that's the first practice of the book in, investing in your best self is about understanding who you are and how you show up. And also being really conscious that sometimes our intention and our impact don't align for other people. And so we have to pay attention to the gap between our intention and impact. And, you know, the higher up in an organization you get, or the more power you have in any situation, the harder people laugh at your jokes and the less people tell you the truth. And so it's incumbent upon us leaders to check in and say, hey, did that land as I meant it? What, because my intention was here. So I learned how to do that. And I think that helped to balance my sort of boldness, right? I'm confident, I'm bold, but I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I try to be self-aware. My teenage girls might tell you I think I'm better at that. You know? I try. Yeah.
You know, it's when I look at the 7 practices. So I'm an immigrant refugee, and I think when you leave your birth country, whether it's by choice, or in my case, or my family's case, not by choice, it's disruptive. It's a big enough disruption that you end up building resilience. So when I reflect, I feel like, you know, I always had, persistence, toughness to when, you know, fell down, I would get back up. But having said that, I did lack courage. When I reflect on opportunities that were afforded to me early in my career, I passed up some amazing opportunities because of self-doubt. So persistence was there, but I didn't cultivate enough courage to take that bold step. How do you cultivate courage? Like, what advice would you give to your readers in terms of, being able to believe in yourself a bit more, or a whole lot more?
It's a great question. You know, on Wednesday, Simmons University hosts the Simmons Leadership Conference. It was our 43rd year. We had over 6,500 attendees. We do this virtually. We've done it since the pandemic virtually. First 40 years we're in person, and we're going to try this hybrid world next year. The whole theme of the conference was courage and connection. And when I was researching the book, and when my co-authors and I were writing the chapter about courage, what the research showed us time and time again is, you know, courage is not the absence of fear. What it is, it's just the presence of vulnerability. And the more we risk take, the more we sort of try new things, the more our muscle of courage can grow, can strengthen. And the number 1, number 2, number 3 piece of advice I have for people who ask, how can I be more courageous, is to not go it alone, right? So you borrow your confidence from other people who have done it before. You make calls, you ask people to have your back. You check in with the people that love you, who will love you even if you fall on your face and fail. You know, like we're just not meant to do little or big things that scare us by ourselves. And so I just remind people of that. You know, no one died of vulnerability.
That's great advice.
That is really important, right? And, you know, one of the things that you really talk about is this need for embracing authenticity, right? What does that mean for you? Why is that so important, right? When you engage and work with people? So look, I think especially in this world, like, you know, in March of 2020, we stopped being able to avoid the human resource that we don't like, or the resources, and we saw the human beings. We all saw human beings, right? And some of us couldn't fake what was behind us, really, and we got real. It's actually why empathy first leadership is becoming, a necessity for all leaders, because people want to be treated like human beings. And here's the thing: you can't actually treat people like human beings if you don't know who you are as a human being, and you don't show up as real. And so there's a thirst for genuineness right now from our leaders. And if you are faking it, you will be sniffed out. Period. The end. So, you know, it's a moment of time where we have so much permission to be real. And, you know, look, the Thriver we interviewed for the book, Carla Harris, she would tell you, do you guys know Carla? She's awesome. Has she been on your show? This is 275, 276. Yeah.
No, but hopefully you make the introduction and we can have her on the show.
Yeah.
Carla from Morgan, right? Morgan Stanley.
Yeah, Morgan Stanley. Yeah, she's awesome. So she has this great quote, and I quote her all the time. I go to the church of Carla Harris. Your authentic self is your competitive advantage, because no one can be you the way you can be you. So why would you hide behind a bushel? Why would you dim your light? That's you, right? I know there's risks out there. I'm not advocating for people to, people sometimes ask me like, how do you handle uncomfortable dress conversations at work? If you have to give feedback to somebody about what they're wearing. And I'm like, I think it's really simple. I was like, if you're going to play tennis, you don't wear a bathing suit. If you're going to go to the beach, you don't wear an evening gown. Like, if you're going to go to work, don't wear something that you're going to, go to the beach in, or go to a nightclub in, or go to the gym in. I mean, nowadays it doesn't really matter. But other than that, like, be you. Bring your goodness. Part of this is really about that thirst. I think women in particular, and this is part of what we've said in the book, we've had to sort of step into a little bit of veneer of perfection, because there's suspicion about our ability to lead, and one mistake and it's like, it's like 10 guys it's equivalent of 100 guys making a mistake when a senior woman leader makes a mistake, because there's just not enough of us to imprint positive. And so, if we can be real and stop trying to be who everybody thinks we should be, and be ourselves and connect with the people who are along the journey with us, all the better. We can create better results all the way around.
That's
right?
Terrific advice. Yeah, when I think of success, if you like yourself, you like what you do and how you do it, you're in a potentially good position. But my question to you is, when clients come to you, when senior executives come to you, how do you know whether they're thriving or not? Or do they know whether they're thriving? How do you know when you're thriving?
By the way, this is really hard stuff to do, right? Because we're told almost everywhere we look that we're not okay the way we are, right? The whole commercial sales machine of selling, I don't know, everything from lipstick to a better diet plan, feeds off of, you are not okay the way you are. So it is tough work. And we have to return to a place of, hang on, you know what? I am enough. I am okay. I can do this. I've got a friend over here who did this. I've got support over there. What did you ask me?
How do you know you're thriving?
How do you know you're thriving? Okay, so it's a great question. You're thriving. I think my definition of thriving is when my strengths and talents come together with where I feel called to be in service of others, right? Where other people are paying attention and I'm doing what I'm good at, and it brings me joy and vitality. I'd say the surround of that is your well-being. So if I can reinforce feeling like I'm lit up and other people are receiving me, right? We have to pay attention to how we're being, perception is the co-pilot to reality. So even though you intend to do and come across this way, you might land this way with others, and you got to check in about that. And thriving is when you are, I think it's your light. I think when you lose track of time doing something, when you really feel heard and seen by another person, when you feel like you're moving the ball forward, I don't know, for me, that's thriving. But everyone has to define that for themselves. And we do talk about that.
Can I just follow up? Before joining my current employer, a majority of my career, I worked for private equity companies, which means that there was so many times that I felt really good about myself, my work, my team, but I didn't have equity in the company. So the compensation piece, I had a blind spot. Then I joined a public company, did the same level of work, same effort, same energy, same joy, but I had equity in the company. And I feel so much better in terms of thriving because it impacted my quality of life.
Yeah. So
how much does getting paid for the work with balance and equality come into play in terms of really thriving or really feeling good, but also knowing that you're getting rewarded for that goodness that you feel? I don't know if my question is clear, but.
No, but you just told me a lot about yourself. And what I know to be true is that for you, it really matters to be compensated for the value you bring. And
be humble and kind, but know your worth is a lesson I learned the hard way.
That's right. I mean, in my last book, I wrote about how women negotiate, because we get a bad rap about negotiating. Women are actually as effective as men negotiating on behalf of everyone, but for themselves. And so I would say, if there's an opportunity for women to think, myself included, about their value, literal value, and about the value they create for others and for their organizations. I can't talk about this too much when companies bring me in to speak, but I will usually advocate for women women to be sure that they are negotiating for their full value, because we oftentimes leave some value on the table.
I need a Susan Brady in my life 10 years ago, but yeah, that's awesome advice. Yeah. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No. A lot of great lessons learned, right? Invest in your best self, get the courage, build authenticity, resilience is important, bold vision, be inclusive leader. The one that really gets me is the healthy team environment. We see a lot of folks that are great leaders, great individual folks, but their environments are not necessarily there. How do you create an environment that is supportive, collaborative, and healthy?
Oh, I love that question. This is the chapter actually. So the book is, each practice in the book has, there's lots of books just on that practice, just on authenticity or just on teams. For the teamwork practice, what we did is we did a distillation and we came up with a rubric of 6 actions. And I want to tell you about the last one, because I think it's the key to successful leadership. I think it's the key to empathy first leadership. I think it's the key to having an inclusive culture. And it's this whole riddle about psychological safety, right? So how do we get psychological safety? We make it okay to have hard conversations. We don't shame, we don't blame. We can take risks together, and we can make, we bring our unique selves to the table. So you feel comfortable bringing your unique self to the table. And then we stay in and we ask for your opinion. And then we don't wrong you when you make a mistake, right? We say, okay, we're going to try harder. So I would say, I can't tell you about the whole chapter in our last couple minutes here, but Ray, the safety piece, when that's missing, and you guys probably know about the research at Google, Project Aristotle. Yeah, I mean, they looked at like, why are our best teams, the best teams? And they came down with, oh my gosh, they've got psychological safety. And, all of this is Maslow's hierarchy, right? So I see you, it goes back to being human beings at work. It goes back to saying, like, I want you to feel good about you. I want to feel good about me. Now let's go make some magic. Let's go make some good stuff happen.
Making magic insights in your book.
Amazing magic every day. Susan Brady, CEO of the Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership and author of Arrive and Thrive. Definitely check it out, and check it out at her Twitter handle, @McKenty Brady. We'll get that one right.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for your kindness.
Thanks so much.
Whoa. An hour has gone by.
So much wisdom nuggets that Susan just dropped on us in 20 minutes. It's got to watch the episode again this weekend and just make sure I captured all of it. So Ray, this is my favorite question at the end of every show. Recap for folks that may have tuned in late. New business model, innovation, ecosystem building, the importance of public-private sector, and the amazing growth of venture investing in the government tech space, tune of $1 billion last year. What's $135 billion gov tech market, and of course, leadership where you're not just surviving, but you're thriving, regardless of gender. Because I found all of the insights from Susan to be incredible. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this was an interesting insight into public sector, private sector, the individual. We are at a moment where we're all trying to reinvent ourselves. We're trying to think about how we're going to get there and be successful, right? Each of our guests today shared an insight that was, useful for every part or every aspect of our lives. And we the only thing we didn't hit was like family and children at the rate we were going. So we've got some great stuff here, and what we learned, especially really from Susan. I mean, there's a lot of leadership, a lot of lessons and techniques. Definitely, I mean, there's stuff that we can do to improve inclusive leadership, and a lot of those lessons also apply to males as well. In terms of being more aware, being more inclusive in terms of how you involve people, being advocates along the way. And then when we think about what Dustin was talking about, I mean, government is about to be reinvented, right? Mm-hmm. That centralized control by the top 100 government contractors. I mean, it was a lock for a long time. I mean, how do you create a lock? You create more regulation, right? And what we're doing at this moment is we're going from centralization, decentralization, regulation to deregulation. And there's some opportunities there that weren't there before, not only in the funding, but also in the level of innovation and access that organizations can have to help improve government services. And of course, the GovTech aspect, that's important. And of course, Shrijeet's been seeing what's happening, right? Those new partnerships, those new opportunities. It really talks about not just the ecosystems that organizations organizations traditionally have thought about, but new ecosystems that are being created with new stakeholders, especially partners and customers, and even their own employees. And so we're going to see more and more of that as we go forward.
Yeah, it was surprising to see how active a $46 billion conglomerate in terms of inviting startup ecosystem, higher ed. It seems like they're building an ecosystem inclusive of multiple sectors, and regardless of the size of the company, as long as they can demonstrate value. And of course, security and scale, as we heard, in government is still important in terms of inviting startups to be part of the tech stack. Which makes sense. Okay, that was episode 275. We just finished our 846th interview. For those of you counting, next week, episode 276. John Mellor, CEO of Domo, will join us. Jane Menon, Managing Director of Publicis Sapiens, and Vikram Malhotra, author and CEO of Excellence and Senior Partner at McKinsey Company. So we've got some big brains joining us next week as well. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye, everyone.
See you, everybody. So